Putin is furious. Russian battleship intercepted by Norwegian Navy in Baltic. After the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the global security system began to move. Putin, when he attacked Ukraine, expected to improve Russia's strategic position. However, the situation has only worsened. The need for NATO has been questioned for many years. Now the alliance has obtained a sense of purpose again. Sweden and Finland announced their entry into NATO. Once, the Russian Tsar Peter I opened a window to Europe. Putin, obviously, is closing it. Before Russia's aggression against Ukraine, Sweden and Finland did not consider NATO membership, although they maintain close military cooperation with all countries of the alliance. After the decision of these countries, the Baltic Sea became, in essence, the inland sea of the NATO bloc. The Russian Baltic fleet was trapped in the Gulf of Finland. Therefore, Putin is trying to push with his elbows in order to restore the previous balance. How successful has he been? The Baltic fleet of the Russian Federation has 48 surface ships and 1 submarine. The main forces are concentrated on a single base in Baltijsk, which is surrounded on 3 sides by the countries of the alliance, and the headquarters is located in Kaliningrad. This city has no overland communication with the main territory of Russia. Due to the geographical conditions, the Russian Baltic Fleet is cut off from the Northern Fleet. To get into the waters of the open North Sea and back, the ships of the Baltic Fleet have to pass through the straits of the Great Belt, Kattegat, Skagerrak. These are narrow spaces, and Russian warships are very vulnerable there. In a combat situation without anti-aircraft and anti-submarine defenses, they have little reason. For Putin, the situation is bad. Prior to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, there were 82 surface ships and 11 NATO submarines in the Baltic. But after Sweden and Finland announced their entry into the alliance, 5 submarines, 9 corvettes, 12 patrol boats, and 20 minesweepers of the Swedish Navy, and 6 mine layers, 8 patrol ships, and 13 minesweepers of Finland were added to the composition. Now the entire water area of the Baltic Sea, with the exception of a small part of the Gulf of Finland, is under the complete control of the alliance. Putin is furious. But instead of diffusing the situation and returning things to normal, the Russian president ordered the Admiral Gorshkov multi-purpose frigate armed with guided missiles be included in the combat flotilla in the Baltic. This is one of the most technically advanced ships of the Russian fleet. Admiral Gorshkov is part of the Northern Fleet of the Russian Federation, but by order of the Commander-in-Chief, the frigate immediately headed for the Baltic Sea. As already mentioned, for this, Admiral Gorshkov had to go through one of the straits between Denmark and Sweden. But first, it had to go along the coast of Norway in the North Sea. The appearance of a Russian frigate in the water area caused a stir in the Coast Guard. Admiral Gorshkov was surrounded by Norwegian patrol ships and ships of NATO allies. The Norwegian patrol ship Bergen escorted the Russian frigate to the area of responsibility of the Swedish Coast Guard, and the Swedes, in turn, kept the Russian frigate in their crosshairs until the coastal defense of Finland took over. It may seem to some that the concern of the members of the alliance is excessive. Another 2 frigates of Project 22350 are being prepared for construction and have not yet received names. For oceanic scales, this is a fairly compact vessel. The Admiral Gorshkov frigate is 443 feet long and 50 feet wide, but the main indicator is the draft, only 15 feet. This expands the frigate's ability to maneuver at shallow depths around the islands and shoals of the Baltic. The speed of the ship is 30 knots, full displacement 4,500 tons. The crew includes 180 full-time sailors and 20 Marines. Typically, frigates have missiles, artillery, radio, and anti-submarine weapons and perform tasks both in single voyage and as part of a group. However, the Admiral Gorshkov is not an ordinary frigate. First, it is extremely agile. But most importantly, the Admiral Gorshkov can carry Zircon hypersonic missiles. So the Russian frigate is capable of single-handedly resisting larger ships and even aircraft carriers. Zircon exists for surface and underwater basing. A surface-based version is already being made. Russian Defense Minister Shoigu announced the start of serial production of Zircons. Admiral Gorshkov was the first to receive hypersonic missiles. This was announced on July 31, 2022 by President Putin at the main naval parade in St. Petersburg. To launch the Zircon, They use the 3S-14 universal. The range of the Zircon is 620 miles. The speed reaches Mach 10. Both indicators are confirmed by the final tests. At the end of May 2022, another successful launch of Zircon was carried out from the Admiral Gorshkov frigate. The rocket was launched from the Barents Sea at a target in the White Sea. The distance to the target was 620 miles. Recall that for American aircraft carriers, a distance of 300 miles is considered safe. Now, obviously, the command of the U.S. Navy will have to reconsider this perimeter. Why is Zircon dangerous? A single hit by Zircon turns any nuclear-powered aircraft carrier known today into a pile of metal that emits radiation. An unprecedented destructive effect is achieved due to hypersonic speed. The missile practically opens the sheathing of an aircraft carrier. The explosion occurs inside the ship's hull. The kinetic energy of a hypersonic missile is so powerful that even with a small charge, it can cause monstrous damage. Due to the crazy speed and the ability to fly a few meters above the surface, it is very problematic to detect the Zircon. In a cloud of plasma, Zircon overcomes the air defense coverage area in literally seconds. The speed is so high that air defense and missile defense systems simply do not have the time to intercept. The combat crew of the attacked ship has less than 90 seconds to capture the target for tracking and open fire. However, but the design ceiling is twice as high. Zircon navigates in space thanks to an advanced navigation system of unknown origin. Traditionally, the Russians are not very strong in such technologies. Now, Russia is under severe sanctions, so the supply of navigation equipment for Zircon missiles is impossible. But somehow, the Russian military industry still gets the necessary components. Putin, who started the resuscitation of the Soviet Union, considers the Baltic countries his sphere of interests. These are Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, formerly part of the USSR. At the same time, for the NATO bloc, the Baltic Sea is an important and advantageous route for supplying the ground forces of the alliance through the ports of the Baltic countries. Let's imagine the worst scenarios that can be realized in the Baltic Sea. The most obvious option for neutralizing the Baltic fleet is a missile salvo and a massive air raid on the base in Baltiisk. The NATO command will strive to sink the Baltic fleet in the first hours of the war. With a massive strike, the Baltic fleet will be destroyed in any case. It will be like a short fight in a trough. The accumulation of ships in a limited area becomes a good target for Alliance aircraft. Even if the ship resists and inflicts some damage on the NATO grouping, this will not affect the overall course of the operation and the outcome of the confrontation. This will be followed by a ground operation of the Alliance forces from the territory of the Baltic countries in order to capture the coast of Kaliningrad and the Gulf of Finland. Even if by this time some Russian ships miraculously survive, they will have nowhere to return and nothing to defend. NATO will close the exit from the Gulf of Finland with minefields and establish air supremacy. But even without a ground operation, the Alliance will be able to completely neutralize the Baltic fleet. A similar flow, the Admiral Gorshkov can disable up to 20% of the Alliance warships in the Baltic Sea. And then the war will go according to an unpredictable scenario. This is probably why the United States and NATO are diligently working out options to counter hypersonic missiles. The drills are going on all the time, even while
notification bell to stay informed about our next videos. Don't forget to like the video and leave your point of view in comments.